Throughout Daniel Jones's career, there has been a lot of talk about him, whether it was warranted or unwarranted. But now, after the Giants finished the season 9-7-1 in Brian Daboll's first year and winning a wild card game on top of that, Daniel Jones has been playing on another level, and it's fair to give his credit where credit is due. But there are still some mainstream analysts, and there's one I want to focus on today, that have still can't cross over that bridge, still want to die on that hill and just prove to everybody that their initial take about Daniel Jones is correct, and they will never waver from that. All right, it's even in the Giants fan base. But there's one take that I saw on Twitter that completely baffled me. The worst take on Daniel Jones you can probably imagine. What's going on, guys? What's going on, 27 Squad? Welcome back into another video. And today we're going to be taking a look at Colin Cowherd's take on Daniel Jones. Now, listen, you guys know, all right, for all of you guys that are new, I was not a big fan of Daniel Jones when he was drafted. I don't think anybody was, okay? I was one of those guys that my reaction video got thousands of views because I reacted and hated the pick. But ever since 2019, ever since his rookie year, I've always been a supporter of him, defending him, maybe sometimes when I shouldn't. But over the past year or so, I've been a very, very much so balanced on him, on giving him credit when it's due and criticizing him when need be. But it's so disingenuous to constantly rag on Daniel Jones and not give him the credit that he's due. So we're going to be talking about Colin Cowherd and his take, and every time he says something stupid, I'm just going to interrupt him.
Let's say your kid's really struggling in school, and so you're like, okay, I'm going to get him the best tutor possible. He's failing. And the tutor gets the grade up to a C. A is not realistic. B is overly hopeful. But the tutor, you got the best tutor in town, gets your son to a C plus. You feel pretty good. But let's be realistic. It's not getting into the Ivy League, okay?
Listen, we all know Colin Cowherd has the worst analogies in sports media where he compares a quarterback to his ex-wife and things like that, right? But this analogy doesn't make any sense at all. Pretty much the gist of this video, and we'll get to the rest of what he says, the gist of this video is pretty much him saying that Brian Daboll deserves all the credit and Daniel Jones didn't do anything. All Daniel Jones did is ride the coattails of Brian Daboll's coaching, and that Brian Daboll should get the credit. In this, he uses an analogy of a kid failing a class and a parent or tutor getting that student from an F to a C. Right? Because apparently he's not playing at an A level, which I understandable. He proceeds to say that the C, getting him to a C, it was all Brian Daboll. But when it comes to, think about high school, okay? When you're failing a class, when you're flunking a class, and a tutor helps you pass your test from an F to a C, who gets the credit? Whose report card does it go on? It goes on the kids, not the tutors. Or the tutor doesn't get the credit for getting that grade up. The tutor doesn't get it, the parent doesn't get it, the teacher doesn't get it. It's the student. You deserved it. You took that coaching, you took the tutoring, you took the lessons, you learned from it, you performed, and there's your new grade. Now, whether you want to kind of decipher how well of a level Daniel Jones is playing is up to you. But like, Colin Cowherd is giving a little bit of way and saying that, yeah, the offense is running nicely, Daniel Jones is performing nicely, but it's not Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones sucks. It's just Brian Daboll. There are plenty of quarterbacks you could point out in the league that probably wouldn't be where they are if not for the environment they were put on, the coaches that they were put around. Like, how many times do we see that? Josh Allen. Brian Daboll also coached Josh Allen. Josh Allen was a project coming into the league. He wasn't a first round pick. Like, he wasn't first round pick talent, like ready to go as soon as he was drafted. He had a lot of issues, and you saw that through the first 2 years of his career. In fact, very similar to Daniel Jones, where he was turning over the ball, not being able to get the ball to receiver. You're telling me that only Brian Daboll deserves the credit for Josh Allen being Josh Allen? That doesn't make any sense.
So I see all this optimism with Daniel Jones. He got the best tutor to save his career. His career was done. He was awful. with an elite left tackle, one of the game's best, with a star running back, one of the league's best, with a guy that's going to win Offensive Coach of the Year, a brilliant offensive mind. Daniel Jones threw 15 touchdown passes and was behind Davis Mills and Taylor Heineke in passing yards per game. By the way, it's not a little thing to have a star running back, a brilliant offensive coach, and a great left tackle.
This is what triggered me to want to make this video. This part right here. He mentioned that the Giants have a star left tackle. Joe Thomas, the star left tackle for the Cleveland Browns, won nothing in his career. Quarterbacks sucked under him. And yet he was still one of the best left tackles in the league. So that means nothing, okay? If you don't have the right coaches and the right pieces around it. The left tackle means nothing. Then he brings up that he has Saquon Barkley. What does Saquon Barkley have to do with touchdown passes? He then brings up Daniel Jones's low passing yards per game. By the way, you think Colin Cowherd is watching film? You think Colin Cowherd is watching games? I bet he hasn't watched a NFL game that wasn't primetime in a long time, okay? He's got other things to do, all right? He covers like every sport. You think that he's actually watching these games? I guarantee you he's probably watched a handful of Daniel Jones's games, and they were all primetime where he got his ass beat by the Eagles or something. He's basically looking at the numbers and deciding if Daniel Jones is good by the numbers. There are so much in detail that you have to go over when looking at Daniel Jones's numbers, just like every other player in the league. Looks at the low passing yards per game and said it's lower than these quarterbacks listed, but then in the same breath, he says, why is the passing yards so low? He has Andrew Thomas and Saquon Barkley. Then in the same breath says that he has no one at receiver. He doesn't have anyone at receiver.
They are missing a number one receiver. They got a bunch of 2s and 3s. They're okay, but they don't really have a guy, a Jamar Chase, a Justin Jefferson. For the record, most teams don't.
Are you kidding me? Just look at the NFC East. You have Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown and Quez Watkins in one team. You have C.D. Lamb, Michael Gallup, and other receivers on the Cowboys. And then you look at Washington with Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel, and Terry McLaurin. That's just the NFC East. I can go down the list. Okay, Isaiah Hodgins was a 6th round pick. Richie James is like a 7th round pick or something like that. Darius Slayton is a 5th round pick. You're dealing with late rounders. Not even mid-rounders, late rounders. And they're your starting receivers. We had David Sills starting at some point. We had Marcus Johnson starting at some point. Kenny Golladay was ineffective this season. And Kadarius Toney, we traded him because he didn't want to be on the field. And you're saying that most teams are in that situation? Most receiving corps look just like the way the Giants do? I would argue there is not one quarterback doing more with less than Daniel Jones. I'm not saying Daniel Jones is elite. I'm not saying Daniel Jones is a top 5 quarterback or even a top 10 at right now. But what I'm saying is you don't really see the amount of production coming from a quarterback with this receiving core, with this talent around the offensive line. Besides Andrew Thomas has been struggling all year. But yeah, most offense in the league have mid-round picks starting for the majority of the season for your quarterback and doing more with those weapons than Daniel Jones is, right? Ridiculous.
What did Daboll do with Daniel Jones? He clearly doesn't think he's a dynamic passer. How do I know that? Because what he really did was clean up all of his god-awful mistakes and asked him to run more.
This is how you know. This is how you know Colin Cowherd does not watch Giants football. Daniel Jones has not had turnover issues since his sophomore season. That's how you know he's stuck in 2019. He's stuck in 2020. Daniel Jones does not turn the ball over anymore. Even last year with Jason Garrett's god-awful offense. And then he brings up that Brian Daboll doesn't believe in him as a passer, so he made him run more. No, that is not the case. You are right. You were half right. He doesn't believe in this offense opening up because of the receiving core that we have and that they cannot get open. The Giants have struggled at the receiver position ever since Daniel Jones got here. We've never been stable. In fact, this year, as far as like the roster goes, this is the worst the wide receiver position has looked, and somehow it's looked the best since Daniel Jones has been here. Why is that? Daniel Jones has elevated the receiving core. Brian Daboll is a huge part of that. Nobody denies that. Brian Daboll's system, Mike Kafka's play calling, is conducting all of this, but Daniel Jones is executing. You're not seeing Daniel Jones pull off on a handoff and just zip a dart RPO, in between traffic. You're not seeing him making his throws on runs. This guy has not thrown a wobbly pass since he's been here. He throws one of the tightest spirals you can see. He's very accurate. He always gets the ball on time. There's never been a problem with Daniel Jones' skill set, and the fact that he's saying he's cleaning up all the ugly stuff. What ugly stuff are you talking about besides turnovers, which hasn't been a problem since 2020? We're in 2023.
If you think somebody's got a great arm, you let him throw 42 times.
That's ridiculous. No, you're not going to find me any coach in the NFL that wants their quarterback to throw 42 times. In fact, you really want to see your quarterback only throw like 30 times. You want to be as efficient as you can with the football and run the ball. I feel like he's talking about all these, just over 3,000 yards passing, but he's not accounting for the 708 rushing yards Daniel Jones had. I don't think people know the magnitude that 708 yards is from your quarterback position.
What he really did is, okay, you're making 2 mistakes a game. I'm going to cut out the mistakes. I'm going to raise your ceiling, and I'm going to have you run 17 times against the Vikings. That was more than Barkley. I think Saquon Barkley ran like a little more than half that.
That's wrong again. Apparently, you don't look at the game as well, because the 17 carries were not all Daniel Jones. 4 of them were QB kneels, which count as carries, count as attempts. So he only ran the ball 13 times. I know the difference between 13 and 17 is not big, but when you're looking at numbers and you see 13 attempts versus 17 attempts, it kind of makes you think, one way or another. So it's actually 13 attempts. And yes, most of those were design runs, and they worked. So what's the point of complaining about it? Nobody complains when Lamar Jackson takes the ball and just runs. Nobody complains when he does that. But somehow it's a problem when Daniel Jones does it.
Let's not pretend they don't have anything. They have the best defensive coordinator, arguably in the sport, the best new offensive mind in the sport in Brian Daboll, an elite left tackle, a star running back, and a great front seven defensively. Like, he doesn't have to win shootouts. And with that, they had 9 close wins and 1 blowout win. So the margin for the Giants...
You're absolutely right. First of all, front seven, I would slow your roll on that. Besides the god Micah McFadden, we don't have any linebackers, and the front seven accounts for linebackers, so let's throw that away. We have a good defensive front with Kayvon, Dex, Leo, and Azeez whenever he wants to play and be healthy, but that's pretty much it. And yes, you're right. We do have a great defensive mind at defensive coordinator. We do have the great offensive mind of Brian Daboll. That's why we are 9-7-1 and going to the divisional playoffs.
I think you would admit, if they got a number 1 receiver, next year most Giant fans would be like, that's the missing piece. They're not a team they need another corner. They need a star receiver. I'd like to see him go get like a top center in the free agent market.
He just contradicted himself. He literally said, it's not like the Giants don't have anything right now.
Let's not pretend they don't have anything.
He begins to list stuff, and then his mind goes somewhere else, and then talks about, well, yeah, the Giants actually need a corner. They need a center.
I think you would admit, if they got a number 1 receiver, next year most Giant fans would be like, that's the missing piece. They're not a team they need another corner. They need a star receiver. I'd like to see him go get like a top center in the free agent market.
They need a receiver. The Giants, thank you for proving our point, Colin. The Giants don't have much to work with. Every team has some star players. Every team has their best players. That's just what it is. They'll have a left tackle. They'll have a running back. They'll have a star edge rusher. Does that mean the team should be okay and the quarterback should freaking win 13 wins and throw for 30 touchdowns a game? That doesn't 30 touchdowns a season? That doesn't make any sense. And then he proceeds to talk about how the team needs a corner, a guard, a center. Yeah, exactly, Colin. Thank you. You've contradicted yourself probably 3 times so far today. So far in this clip.
But this idea is Brian Daboll saved a bust. This was a bust career.
I think Brian Daboll saved the Giants, not a bust career of Jones. Well, that is a part of it, because Jones would have flunked and just been thrown to the streets if Jason Garrett stood there and Joe Judge. But Brian Daboll saved the New York Giants. He didn't save Daniel Jones, just Daniel Jones. He saved the New York Giants. He saved New York Giants football. That's just what it is. And that's why he's coach of the year. Not because of what he did with Daniel Jones, but what he did with the whole team.
But when I hear all this optimism, it's like you do realize at this point, Brian Daboll, the tutor, saved failing a class and got him to a C to a C minus. That's what we've got here. There's no way. Nobody thinks he's Mahomes. You're not going to ace the class.
I still don't understand what the point of that analogy was. How many times have we seen, and it's crazy because we can't even give Daniel Jones an ounce of credit, but we'll give credit to any quarterback who developed under a coach and that coach elevated the quarterback's game or any other player's game. Look at Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley is having a career year. Saquon Barkley has ran a different way than we've ever seen Saquon Barkley run. Is that just Brian Daboll? And it's funny how we're just talking about Saquon Barkley, how great he is, but we're not talking about how Brian Daboll helped him get to that level too. Why is it just Brian Daboll saved Daniel Jones and not Brian Daboll saved the entire New York Giants team and elevated the entire team? You think Richie James is a fantastic receiver or was a fantastic receiver before he got to the Giants? Has Daniel Jones lost us a game this year? Daniel Jones has not lost us a game this year. Think about that. I'm not saying Daniel Jones is elite, top 5, but Daniel Jones is not bringing this team down. If you want to argue he doesn't elevate it to where it needs to be, that's debatable because of what we have around. There's not much quarterbacks in the league that's going to perform at a higher level right now with what we have. There's just not. So that's the video, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you guys think Colin Cowherd is right? Do you think he's wrong? Leave all your comments, concerns, questions in the comment section below. I'm Kid Blue. I'll see you guys in the next video.